Welcome to the I Don't Believe in Astrology podcast. The podcast is dedicated to conscious souls looking to change the world. Astrologer by day, climate activist by night. Here is your host, Debra Silverman.
I am only human. I have my faults and my shadows that are as bright as the light that shines within.
Welcome to the I Don't Believe in Astrology podcast. Debra Silverman and Jolie Dawn, who is my fellow Gemini and appropriately named this website because to start with, you didn't really believe, did you?
That's right. It took me a little while to really get on board with astrology.
Exactly. So it's not a surprise that any of you watching this, you don't have to believe in it. What you have to know is that astrology believes in you. So there's that. Okay, so today, the reason why Jolie is here is Jolie has single-handedly, and this is something for you all to know in the name of marketing, she has presented a model that allowed our company to take the next step. And because we immediately met and had this like recognition, there was trust. And it's a word that gets bandied about. It's just very unusual in this new age movement that we can use the word trust and sincerely mean it. And I totally trust you, Jolie.
Thank you, Debra.
It's the best feeling when you can trust someone. Why? Because she has 5 planets on Earth, which you're going to find out about. So let's begin by, I always let my interviewee describe their career, or just, you don't even have to do the what do you do, but so much as who are you in the business world? How does it show up for you?
I'm a blend of intuitive and witchy in all things energetically aware, congruent, as well as in the field of marketing and online lead generation, and kind of the marriage of those two things, the intuitive and marketing and business. And one of my most favorite projects that I created is one of the largest online gatherings for female entrepreneurs that want to meditate and have a breakthrough in their relationship with prosperity, called the Dare to Prosper Challenge. And we've sent thousands and thousands of women through this challenge all over the world. And I have a host of products and programs that I serve in called Creatrix Calling, Creatrix Academy, Creatrix Queendom. And my mantra is financial empowerment through entrepreneurship.
Financial empowerment through entrepreneurship. And you specialize working with women online, yes?
Online businesses for spiritual women, yes.
And so your gift is you show people the technology, give them a model so that they can actually enter into this world called cyberspace, and then share their message without the internal dialogue squishing them.
Exactly. So much of it is emotional, Debra. So much of it is belief in self and belief in what's possible in the world. And so I really support from a trauma-informed way in relationship to self, relationship to creation, relationship with life around us. And how can we open up entirely new portals of what's possible for our lives and our business and make it very practical with strategies in the material world?
And then can you just talk briefly about you being an author? So here's the first entrance, you guys, a businesswoman who knows how to use the internet, a millennial who works at the practical level, and then talk about the writer in you, you little Gemini Virgo.
I love expression through writing, and I have for a long time. It was back in 2009 that I started using Facebook as a blogging platform when it really wasn't designed for it back then, and really found that people enjoyed my writing, and it gave me the confidence to write and publish my first book when I was 25. And I didn't really think much about that book other than I was so proud of myself for the self-expression. And then later, many years later, I got a publisher that signed me and actually paid me to republish that book.
And what was the name of that book so we all know?
Empowered, Sexy, and Free.
Empowered, Sexy, and Free. Well, that's so you. So for any of you, this is one of the messages in this particular podcast is when you believe it and your mind is aligned with your body, there's congruency and then manifestation. I like to call it womanifestation. And that's what I saw with you so quickly. And I resonated with it because my whole value this lifetime is help me not be full of shit. Like, because I am double air, you're so much earth. You have 5 in earth, I have 2. So my air element would, in my younger years, would take me off to multiple ideas, indecisiveness, and feeling creative, but not getting results. Whereas you, what I've watched with you is you say it, you do it, you follow through. And has that always been true?
In seasons, there were seasons of my life where I made myself nervous because I couldn't seem to follow through on any project when I just kind of was lacking direction and was really dealing with the emotional stuff of not believing that I could, not believing that I could take up space or be seen or have a place in my industry. And so I felt severe stuckness for many years until I found that inner creatrix within me, she who creates her life intentionally. And I got really good at creating projects and bringing them through the finish line and leading a team around me and seeing my visions translate into real life and being able to consistently do that.
So, because I think we both share this. This is a message about when you're young. If anyone's watching this that are in their 20s, it's almost like, and I've heard this from a brain scientist, the brain isn't fully formatted. And so the emotional body takes over. So drugs and sex and promiscuity and indecisiveness and your book, isn't that what your first book is about?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I tell the story of being so incredibly lost in my early 20s. I had a traumatic event when I was 20 years old that forever changed my life around me.
And what was that?
It was my dad's suicide. Yeah, his spin out in mental health during the economic collapse of 2008. He was a war veteran. He had very complex PTSD, and he spun out into mania after a health crisis. And this whole very long mental health saga ended in his suicide. And, you know, his last year of life was really traumatic for the whole family and really hard on my mom. And so by the time he died, it was like I inherited being a caretaker for my mother. And she stayed in her body for 9 more years, but she was not choosing to live and had lots of substance abuse issues. And I basically inherited a daughter, or, you know, being a caretaker role for my mom. So my 20s were hard with family stuff. You know, my brain wasn't fully deformed yet at 20 years old, processing this very big reality. And I had to put on my big girl panties before I felt ready to. And that was really, among other things in my childhood, such a big loss of innocence and a really instant maturity, because my dad also left behind multiple 7 figures of debt. There were lawyers involved, there was the IRS involved, there were creditors involved. So my brother and I worked with the attorneys for an entire year to clean up the mess of all of it. Meanwhile, he had owned a law firm in San Diego, and his law partner was forging his signatures and suing us and try to take every dollar of the trust that we had. And I was working 2 jobs. I was finishing college. I was caretaking for my mother. My mother's in and out of rehab. And my life was dark and heavy, and I felt so disconnected from my peers. Like, they have no idea what's going on with me. They have no idea what my home life looks like. That when I go home tonight to the place my mother and I are renting, we are in the rough neighborhood of San Diego, and my mom's in bed sick because she's trying to detoxify opiates for like the 18th time in my life. It was hard.
What happens when you tell that story? Does it feel like a past life?
Oh yeah, the sadness creeps up because I feel sad for that girl in her 20s that was running so hard from her reality. And this is where my own addiction patterns came in, because I partied like I wouldn't wake up the next morning. Like I would never have a hangover to face. That's how hard I partied. And I was in a group of friends where we just loved to party and drink and pop pills and be reckless, absolutely reckless. Ugh. I mean, there were times where I literally woke up in Las Vegas and be like, how did we get here? And why are we here? And just going on these grand adventures and coming out of blackouts and be like, can you piece together the night for me? And I just had no self-preservation and no thought of like, oh, maybe I should be good to my body, or maybe I should understand my own limits. And it wasn't until I had my own life or death health scare that I got my act together and cleaned out.
Is there any way that you can share your screen and show us your chart? Do you have it on? Because my brand new Mercury retrograde computer does not have your chart, but I know she's got Sun in Gemini, Cancer rising, and Moon in Virgo. And what she's describing astrologically is Gemini, Virgo, when they're put together, have an excessively high nervous system because they're both ruled by Mercury. So they can talk and they can think and they have ideas and they're so creative. And because her chart has so much earth, which you're going to see in a moment, it was propelled by functionality, even when she wasn't functioning. Like you could take Jolie anywhere, which we did already, drop her off and she'll land on her feet. So it's in the 11th house. There's 3 planets. You can circle the 11 in the middle of the circle. That's the house right there. Sun, Jupiter, and Mercury, all in the 11th house, which is the futurist. So she has this very advanced technological ability in business to design and decide the patterns of what business should look like, how you run a launch, what the funnels are. This is all 11th house, highly advanced. And then she has Cancer rising with that little Mars sitting on the ascendant, her intuition, which we're going to talk about in a moment. And then there's her moon, go down to that 0-degree moon, which is right, it's 0 degrees Virgo, but kind of like in Leo. Look at her little hat. So we have here a 11th house. A simple version of this chart is there's 3 planets in the 11th, which is the futurist. And then there's 3 planets in the 6th. Can you go over there, the 6th house, where Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus are all in Capricorn. So this is where her grounding comes from. Business, the ability to organize, to structure, to expect nothing but the best. And one of the things I love about you, your little Mercury and Taurus, you can stop sharing because most people don't understand this language, is, and it's true of you and I in business, is everything gets articulated and everything's fair. So if you're going to work, and we've been working together and sharing our audiences, and we have, we've been really doing a lot. I have accomplished, because of you, 2 major events. And I told her this when I met her. One was a sacred circle. I finished doing a gathering with her girls, beautiful women. And she said, hey, what do you think Debra could do with a sacred circle? With a, no, how'd you say? A
mastermind.
Mastermind. I didn't even know what it meant. And I was like, a what? And then she said, watch this. And within 1 month, I had gathered 10 women at a very high price to spend 9 months with me, including you. So thank you for your, I am one more person. The difference between me and your audience is I already had an audience. So she just instilled some skills. And next thing I knew, we were dancing in the stars. That 3 planets in the 6th house, I didn't even realize this. Not only do you have 3 planets in Capricorn, they're in the house of Virgo. Did you know that?
Oh.
So it's a double whammy. It's not just Earth, but it's the Earth house. So this is what you learn in astrology that I don't believe in astrology podcast. She could not. One, Capricorns go down when they're young. They have very difficult childhoods, 3 planets in Capricorn. They become old when they're young. I'm taking care of my mom. I'm taking care of my father's estate. I'm taking care of this family dynamic. And then they hit 30. And then from that point on, they're like, no, bye-bye 20s. And isn't that what happened during your Saturn return? You turned it around?
Oh yeah, I got free. I got free of my mother's passing. Was a huge grant of freedom to me. And I dealt with a lot of guilt because of how much relief I felt. And I had some beautiful memories with my mother, and she instilled a lot of self-confidence onto me, and a lot of my gifts come from my mother. So I'm grateful. And I always want to speak very highly of her. And her end of life was very challenging for me and caused me lots of sleepless nights of worry. I had a huge phobia around what her end of life would be. And I saw hospitals and I saw strokes and I saw this thing drawn out, and she ended up going peacefully. One simple, seemingly routine night in her sleep, just didn't wake up one morning, and the doctors called it heart failure. And I was like, wow, I spent years with a vision of how expensive that was going to be and how traumatizing that was going to be. And it was nothing like I feared it to be. It was such a good lesson in not trying to predict the future and wasting so much energy on worry.
And how old was she when she passed?
She was 68.
And she went in her sleep.
Yeah.
Wow. And what was that like when you got the call? How'd they find her?
Yeah. She was living with my brother at the time, and my brother's very psychic and in tune. He went on a trip that weekend, and he knew something was wrong. She wasn't answering her phone. So he sent the neighbor over to check, and that's when she found her.
Blessings on your mother. May she rest in peace and know that her daughter's legacy is a continuation of consciousness, the opposite of what your mother handed you. What an opposite story.
Oh, yeah, it's vastly different. I made very, very different choices with my life than both my parents did. It's just a huge leap in consciousness. And I think that's how we're meant to evolve.
This is my life's work. You get handed your parents' karma and the legacy of that bloodline. It goes through your veins. It's typical that you feel the absorption. And then you, and I know this is true, learn meditation, learn to pray, learn to ask for help, learn to do therapy, learn to ask questions. And then we change the entire trajectory of our children's children. Like the whole thing stops here. So let's just name that. Anyone watching this, if you're still bound to the karmic imprint that was handed to you through your bloodline, and the lineage that you came with, it's a free will button right to the left of that red door that says, please come in, sit down, and start working. And so here's the question I ask people on my podcast. If you weren't talking about online businesses and prosperity and abundance, what would you be talking about? If this was not even an issue, where do you think your mind or your fascination would carry you?
Even though I'm not a mother yet, I've always had a very strong fascination with natural childbirth and postpartum and mothering babies. And it's a huge part of my design. And I've always been very obsessed with babies. So that would be probably my alternative line of work.
And that's Cancer rising.
Is it? Oh,
and it's the essence of your soul. The rising sign announcement. The rising sign is your soul. And it tells you where you're going at the highest level. And by the way, it's also a businesswoman. So let's distinguish that. Yes, they're the mother, the child, but what is a good mom, but an unbelievable businesswoman? She does the cooking. She does the shopping. She organizes the timing. She takes care of the kids when they're sick. She takes care of the husband. It's a full-time job. Finish the sentence. I wish people would
be able to see the gift and the beauty and the preciousness of life and really choose to live while they're on their time on the planet.
Did that make you sad?
Yeah, I think about that was the one thing I really tried to get my mom to see that I wasn't successful at. Freud would say we end up doing with our life's work the thing that we couldn't be successful with our parents and our family dynamic. And all I wanted was for my mom to get excited about life. And I played double time to get myself excited so I could carry some of her excitement. And there's just so many people that don't know that it can be so beautiful here. And there's a lot of people here that are in a lot of pain.
That's so beautiful. You're such a little compassionate creature. Okay, I have a question. What's something in life you couldn't live without? Like if they said, Jolie, you can't do this, you'd be like, no, don't take that.
My friends.
I knew it.
No interest in doing life without my friends and having fun with my friends.
That's the 11th house, by the way. There's friendship. This is one of my favorite questions. If there was someone that was no longer living that you could talk to or have a conversation or an interview with, and it can be more than one person, who would it be?
Oh my gosh, I need to have a conversation with Mary Magdalene and get this story straight. Was she Jesus's lover? Was she the prostitute? Who was she? I need to talk to that woman.
I love that. Oh my God, that's a great answer. Okay. So tell me the thing that you love about your job. Like because I know what a workaholic you are. What's the satisfying factor?
Seeing what women become around me and who they blossom into. I've been doing this work now for 9 years, and the reputation I've been able to build and the consistency of expansion and success around me, and seeing how many women are in their 6 and multi-6-figure businesses sustainably is the best feeling in the world, because my whole life changed when I was financially empowered and learned how to take care of myself, and helping other people do that is so deeply fulfilling.
Oh God, I love that so much. Okay, what's one of the questions I should have asked you? Like, if you could talk about something that you love talking about, what would I ask you?
Debra would be asking me, I would say, maybe what wisdom do you have now that you wish you could impart on your younger self?
Bingo.
And the reason why I ask it that way is because I really did waste a lot of time. Maybe it's not wasted because it's all a learning, but I spent a lot of time questioning myself and feeling bad about myself and judging myself. I mean, there were nights and nights and nights, Debra, when I tried to start this business in the early years, where I would just talk shit to myself. You are nothing. Everything that you want to be in this industry has already been done by women that are smarter, sexier, brighter, and prettier than you. I mean, the harshness of my inner critic for so many years was like
Moon in Virgo.
Moon and Virgo. I feel like, Debra, that's one of the placements in my chart that if I could ask God to rewrite it, I may ask her to rewrite that one. I don't know. What's your opinion?
No, that I appreciate that. I can see exactly why you say that, especially being a Gemini. It's painful. Moon and Virgo, what the high road is, we all trust you because your quality control. You have a natural quality control. You know the real goods. You know the real people. You sniff them. Moon and Virgo will not tolerate mediocrity. Beep, beep, beep. But the downside is they don't know when to stop criticizing themselves. That's real.
I went through a little interesting season a few months back where I wasn't sleeping well. And you know the saga. And the level of judgment I had on myself was like, whoa, Jolie, like you're allowed to have 3 nights in a row where you don't sleep well. And it doesn't mean you're a fraud and no one should trust you. And so much shame came up around it because I felt like my personal life wasn't settled. And yeah, just the standard to which I hold myself sometimes can be really unsettling. So continually practicing kindness with myself is the learning.
And you're getting so much better at it.
I'm getting so much better. Yeah.
And that is, I'm going to just say that out loud here in this little podcast. It is true. There are parts of my chart too, where I'm like, I cannot believe there's no off button. Like you have to just tell me that once you study this, you find the off button, but that's not true. There's compulsive human nature factors. There's a variation on how we talk about that part of ourselves and the function of it. But the actual reality of it, Moon in Virgo, it comes with the critic.
You know, before I understood astrology, I related to this part of myself as being, I thought it was, I'm so masculine in my emotions. And I really appreciated myself of like, I'm not like other women that spin out emotionally and I'm very logical and I can talk through my emotions. And now understanding that Moon in Virgo is a part of me where my former male partners would say like, I really appreciate your logic around your emotional intelligence. And, you know, I think that can be a positive thing, and it is a positive thing. And also sometimes when I'm alone with my thoughts, those thoughts tend to spin out sometimes, and I get to be really compassionate and kind in my inner world, in my inner dialogue.
And how much now is your observer on? I'm curious the degree to which this work has influenced you.
Yeah, I hear you in my head all the time, Debra. Turn on your observer, turn on your observer. Instead of letting it think you get to rise above and be the third party witnessing what's happening here.
So it is a practice, but I've seen it shift in you. I've definitely seen the shift.
Yeah. You know, I'm 33 now. I'm learning a lot about my true desires in life. I have played this game of how quickly can I create success for myself. And I've had enormous growth and scale in business. I've been able to afford myself a beautiful, abundant luxury life. And I'm in the home now that I bought for myself. And it all feels really surreal that I was able to do this for myself from a girl who came from a lot of scarcity and a lot of believing that she couldn't. It was one micro step at a time. And I'll tell you, Debra, my priorities are changing a little bit in the way of wanting to put my focus on dating and bringing my babies into the world.
I love that so much, you little Cancer rising.
I want it. Yeah.
Makes my heart sing. I think as a person from a different generation than you, I didn't have the wherewithal to know how to track myself. I teach it, but I learned it through the School of Hard Knocks because I couldn't identify my appetite. And you have, and you are, and that's your observer. You keep tracking. What's Jolie want now? For me, getting married, having kids, playing house, like for your generation, it's such a conversation. Should I get married? Should I have kids? Men or women? Do I do traditional relationship? This was not part of my conversation ever. I mean, it was under the system. And I have many friends who tried, but we couldn't. The assumption was, this is back in the 70s. Such a funny thought. Father knows best, and, Dream of Jeannie, and all the lessons we learned from Mike Douglas watching these talk shows. It was all normalcy. It was so I see you. It's very exciting for me that you're on my shoulders. You're standing on my shoulders. And I'm like, what do you see up there? Oh, is there freedom to follow your own rhythm on your terms with no one pushing you?
Yeah.
Because just think, in one generation behind us, our parents got married with no free will. In one generation behind them, there was assigned marriages. My grandparents got married because they were living in a little shtetl, that was the name in Jewish communities, where everybody was Jewish and you didn't get a vote. There was this man, that man, they would meet the family and then they would stick them together and glue them, and there was no such thing as divorce. That was only 10 minutes ago. We lose track of time. You are a futurist. Your chart is, if you're in the future, you're helping us design another reality. You're giving women liberation. And it wasn't only, it was literally, from my experience, 10 minutes ago that I remember saying I was an astrologer, and everybody was like, you're a what? Now, look at the internet. Look at the amount of women that I've taught to be astrologers. I was so much rejected in my graduate studies when I told them I was doing astrology. They were like, you're doing that? Come on. That my graduate, when I went in to speak to the supervisor and tell her you're going to love this. I wanted to do a research project on mental patients and the correlation in astrology. And she was like, wait, what did you say? And I did it. She gave me the okay. And I went and worked in the back wards of hospitals, and I collected all their charts, and I did it. And there was a huge correlation with particular influences. And it was against everyone's decision. Like, they had to step off. I had to use my will. And you decided to go online and create a system where you taught all kinds of women who don't even need to have a degree to go do exactly what their gifts are. Happy birthday to us. So we are two generations, we're at the separation, because I am double your age, literally. So exciting. Mm-hmm. And you helped me see the effect of my hard labor. Mm-hmm. And I can't thank you enough because I see how hard you work. So talk about that. What is it about work, Miss 5 planets in Earth, 3 in Capricorn, that turns you on? Like, is it compulsive? Is it a decision? How would you describe it?
I love creating art. I really love when I have an idea and I see it come to life in the material world. And the language that I use around it is what I call reality creation. So I watch my reality get created around me, and I watch this huge domino and ripple impact of my leadership and my art make serious and real differences for people. So when I created the Dare to Prosper challenge, it came out of, could I track everything that I did to come out of deep rooted scarcity consciousness, where I never saw myself as a high earner. The greatest dream that I had for my life, that was reinforced by my mother, is marry a rich man. And I went through that path.
When I was a high generation, that's why.
Oh yeah, get yourself a rich dude. That's your ticket to prosperity in this life. So I find myself an amazing, beautiful, successful boyfriend when I was 21. We were engaged when I was 24, and my whole life was predictable. I would be his little arm candy. I would make conversations at the dinner parties he takes me to, and I would forever live in his shadow, and I would be supporting his mission. Which, if people choose that for their lives, it's a great life too. My karma and my dharma was something different in this life, because he broke it off when I was 25, and
Why did he break it off? Why did he break it off?
He knew more than I did at the time. I couldn't see what he could see, which is I was falling out of love, and he could see that, and I couldn't see that. And we did some creative things like trying some open relating. And as soon as that stuff happened, he could see how activated I was and flirty and turned on I was. And he's like, oh, she's not having those feels for me. So he called that and called off our engagement in our relationship. And so I started my career in who I was at 25 years old. I had been doing some live events in San Diego and kind of dipping my toe into the coaching community, but I was nowhere near supporting my life from it. And it was a make or break moment of who do I get to choose to be now? And I look back to that 25-year-old, I'm like, you are so brave. And she wrote the book that year and published the book that year. And it didn't take me long. It took me 1 year to create a 6-figure business. Because I'll tell you what, Debra, the first woman he dated, we stayed friends. To this day, we're still great friends. And he was dating this new woman. And he's like, she's a 6-figure entrepreneur. I was like, what does that mean to be a 6-figure entrepreneur? He's like, it means that she makes over $100,000 a year. It's like, great. That is my motivation. $100,000 in a year. Now it's this really common thing. Did your business get to 6 figures? Back then, I'd never even heard of those words together before. And I was like really doing the math and strategizing. How much would I need to make monthly? And how many clients is that? And I did it. And it took me a year to do it. And I was so proud of myself.
My God, I love that story so much. What a wise man. What a gift that was for him to recognize while he was in love with you that he needed to let go of you, and you've maintained your friendship.
I know, it was really so very generous, and he saw there was more for me to become. And to this day, we just had a long catch-up chat. He's like, you're my little protege. It's so great to see you succeed. And he's married now with his kiddos. And yeah, our timing was off. And it was a big learning lesson. But talk about, if that things would have gone differently, I would have my babies right now and probably be divorced and have a very different life path and not known who I was as this creator. I don't know. There's many different scenarios of how life could play out.
I love that so much. Oh my goodness. This podcast is about primarily, obviously, the I don't believe in astrology piece, which you entered. Can you speak to that? What your ambivalence was and what happened for you?
Yeah, I found it to be a little annoying that everyone was blaming everything on astrology. Like, my house isn't clean. It's because I'm a Gemini, or I'm bad at relationships. It's because I'm a Taurus, or whatever they were saying. I don't even know if those things correspond properly, but it just felt like a reason. It just felt limiting to me of like, first of all, how could this, even though I'm deeply spiritual and trust the universe in really big ways, and I really trust the unseen, astrology felt unbelievable. It felt like way too much data and information to be believable. And I honestly had some bad readings, to be honest. I mean, just like not helpful, just like incredibly generic, where I was like, this is exactly what I thought astrology was. It was just like, you can kind of see yourself in anything, like a horoscope on the newspaper. But when I started to tune into your world and the quality of it and the preservation of the technology and I think the way you describe it as really traditional and old school and keeping things simple, I had some of the most powerful readings that it's beyond synchronicity, it's beyond accidental. There's absolutely data to be discovered from the time that you entered this planet and the position of the stars.
I'm so happy to hear that. This is just about to wrap up. So when you went through Sacred Circle, and I entered into the back room of your mind, that's where I feel like I live sometimes. What was some of the takeaways? Like, if you had to say the influence of those readings or the influence of studying, because I know you did level 1 and some level 2, what stuck? What stayed with you?
Oh my gosh, it was the dynamics of the group, because now that I could see this group and I had their charts in front of me and we really kind of studied each other, the psychology of each other through our astrology, seeing people play out their charts in real time was hilarious. Like Charla and Maeve being like that Leo fiery self, taking Leo in their chart. Oh my gosh. And yeah, just seeing the archetypes come to life in that really intimate way was stunning. And it made me research everybody that I know and all of their charts, and making my brother get me his birth certificate and asking living mothers about time of birth. And it's just an amazing way to see who somebody is and understand them, deep understanding.
I'm so happy. I'll tell you what I've seen in you is the compulsive behavior of 3 planets in Cap, Mercury in Taurus, and having Moon in Virgo had you under so much pressure. A compulsive, and this is the nature of Earth people. Any of you watching this who are really drawn to getting results and measuring, like you've stayed on the podcast this long and you're like, what do I have to do next? What's on my schedule? I've seen you continue to be unbelievably productive with a breath.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was that Earth energy really started to run me there. And I took a look at my life and my calendar. I'm like, this is not glamorous anymore. Not having time to eat lunch. Like, whose schedule is this? And what Capricorn was in charge to make it look like this? We need to relax around here.
So profound. So for any of you watching this who are in that state of, I don't believe in astrology, the distinction in our system, one is the elements, which you took to, like, I watched you, like we did that 4E process. And when you got to water, who knew? Who knew? She thought she was a Gemini. She found out she had the superpower in water that had never been named, which is meditation and stillness and praying. And really, she's an old soul. And the earth was there saying, we're going to be productive, but not at the expense of your soul.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much, Jolie. I'm so grateful. I always tell you this. I miss you. I am so blown away of, you said that that's the funniest line in the world. When we became friends, I was like, we lived in the same island for 10 minutes. And she had this really funny line where she said, how did it go again?
Oh my gosh, this story is so funny. That was like, a mutual friend was trying to introduce me to Deb and position me as somebody who would be a really cool person to have in her life. And Deb's like, you know me, I just don't really have so much room for friends in my life. And I look at Deb and I'm like, you will be begging to be my friend. We're so much fun together.
And that is Jupiter. And she was right. And now I like anywhere, anytime, if the doorbell rings, the phone rings, I'm like, Jolie's here, stop. We're going to have a party. We're going to meditate. We're going to do the tarot cards. We're going to enter into deep space and we're going to hear. So thank you for your big ears and the fact that you've got so many different colors, you little Gemini, the range of your capacity that matches mine, that makes me feel as an elder, like, oh, good. There are beings behind me who have definitely heard the invitation to be their authentic. I just got the willies.
Thank you, Debra. It's always a joy. And I just love the conversation that comes through when we're together.
Aloha.
Thank you so much for listening. We want to keep this conversation going with you, so please subscribe to our podcast and leave a rating and review to make sure you never miss an episode. Remember, climate activist by day, human by night. Send Debra a DM on Instagram at Debra Silverman Astrology and visit DebraSilvermanAstrology.com. And we're going to leave you like we leave every single episode. Make it your mission to change the world.